Hey everybody, Tom and Tracy here from Feed Your Brand on the Feed Your Brand Facebook page.
Oh my gosh, we're doing a Facebook Live.
Yay.
And it's not even like a gray hair day. Oh.
I know, this is pretty tight quarters here. I'm like all cramped.
I like my side of the recording studio. So for those of you, you're in the recording studio. This is my side of the desk. And we've got the microphone. You can kind of see it a little bit between us. You got the mic between us. And we're trying this new thing because this topic, we didn't want you guys to wait a week or later in the week for this because we have gotten so many people in our Facebook feed talking about this and we didn't want to wait. So we wanted to get the info out to you right away for those of you on Facebook.
Yeah, we actually have a customer who came to us this week who has been podcasting for, 80 episodes or something as a radio show live at a certain time every week. And then it's been repurposed as a podcast. And
when we had another one who in our feed who was considering going and applying to be a radio podcast host. And so we were like, oh my gosh, there's so many pitfalls and so many considerations and some things that you need to do smartly if you're going to go down that road. And there are pros and cons to it. So we want to talk a little bit about that today, but we really also want to make sure that you guys are signing the dotted line with the radio shows or the blog talk shows and doing and asking for the right things because it can make it harder later for you to get the full value out of it. And some people pay for their shows and some people they're sort of paid to do it in a way. They get a reciprocal, I guess it would be like an affiliation for however many listeners they have. So there are different ways to go about it, but sometimes they have some pitfalls for you personally as a brand. And we really want to make sure you're aware of those things.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with broadcasting your podcast live on the radio if you're into it. I mean, there's some obvious pros and cons in that. If you're going to do it live as a radio show once a week or whatever your time interval is, the reality is you have to be available at that time to do it every single week. And your schedule, has to be worked around that. And that can be very limiting. That's one of the things I like about podcasting in sort of the traditional way, not doing it live, is that you can do it whenever you want.
That's right. You can do whatever you want. But also I think that, there's that great appeal to radio because it's broadcast. They provide the audience for you. There's no tech involved. Like that's the one I get the most from people who are doing it. It's like, I don't have to do anything but call in or dial in or do whatever it is, Skype in, if that's the case of how it works. And so we were just, making sure that all of these, that these things that they are considerations for you, but it's time. And that's the big thing that we're here about at Feed Your Brand and what Tom and I have done in our businesses. If you're spending time recording these things, you're spending time doing them, then you need to get full value out of that time spent. And it goes further than the radio show. And that's really where we want to bring the attention to you is that you may not be able to get full value from it if you haven't set some smart things in place. So let's talk a little bit about that. So let's talk about ownership. Okay. Who owns the content, right? So in the case where you're a paid host, which happens in cases, and we have clients who do that, where you're a paid host for a radio station, you do not own the content. You don't own the rights to replay it. This happens a lot on the TV channel ones too, like YouTube and where you're working in somebody else's YouTube station. So it can go TV, not just radio.
Or you don't necessarily own the content. I mean, I think there are probably as many different agreements as there are hosts of radio shows. So maybe some of you do. But we've found oftentimes some people think they have the rights to their content to use it in other ways, and they really don't. So that's, number one thing. You want to make sure you own the content so you can use it to your benefit.
Right. And sometimes there's limitations. So like in my ink column, I have a 2-week limitation, meaning that I can't repost the entirety of the article anywhere for 2 weeks. And then when I do it, I have requirements. I have to link back to the original article. I have to give ink credit. Like there's a series of things that I have to do once I do that. But I do have rights to my content, my words that I wrote after 2 weeks from its original going live. So understanding what's in your contract or what's in whatever you sign in your agreement with the radio show or the blog talk show is really important for you to make sure that you've put in place from the beginning and read that fine print. And if you don't understand it, get someone who does, and maybe talk to somebody else who's been on that station before, right? So, I mean, that's always helpful if you know one of the other hosts.
Yeah.
So there is that. And so sometimes you have content usage limits. In other words, you're not allowed to, you can relink to the article, you can post a brief, but you're not allowed to put a transcription from the airing of the radio show. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to take the audio and edit out the commercials and put it on your station or on your own website or in your own podcast. And so that's where it starts to, maybe limit what you want to do with all of those materials, and maybe in some cases be a waste of money because you can't repurpose it and you can't reuse it. So you don't want to send everyone to that radio station all the time.
I know it seems really easy, that they're going to produce it. All you have to do is call in or log in or whatever, and then they're going to take care of it. Okay, there's some truth to that. But recognize that you may be giving up things if you're going to do that. And it all seems great when everybody's happy. You're recording every week. The show's going out. It's, when the separation happens, when you want to move on from the radio show, where things can get really dicey. And I want to make sure we talk about that today.
Yeah. We'll talk about that, but let's talk about a couple of the other things that considerations. So Tom mentioned before timing, right? You have to be there. It's a specific hour that you have to do. A lot of times with a lot of the shows that you pay to have produced, right? If you don't show for your hour or you're going to cancel the hour, you still pay for it. You pay for the minimum of 4 shows a month, no matter what happens. And so you're going to still pay even if you take a vacation day. And so that becomes cumbersome for a lot of people. It would definitely, that does not fit my style or my schedule at all. Like, that's one of the reasons why when we thought and decided what we were going to do, podcasting became the logical choice for us, straight podcasting, because it's time flexibility. It means we can record in one day, everything for the month. And that's super easy for us. So that's a consideration. Let's talk audience transfer, and then we'll talk about how you get the files and you do some of these things from a technical perspective. So audience, right? A lot of times the radio station may not have, because they have such a broad range of shows, they may not actually have a broad enough audience for you. It sounds great that they have millions of listeners, and isn't that fantastic? But it's not, if it's not millions of listeners interested in your particular topic, is that going to transfer into giving you more business and giving you the visibility you need and giving you more for the time spent? And that's one of my concerns always, is like, is it the right audience? Especially if you're doing it on a true radio station and not a blog radio. So you're in a true radio station that is broadcasting within a particular region. So do you do a lot of local business in the San Diego region, or do you do a lot of business in the Dayton, Ohio region? So like, when you think about those things, does that make sense for you and what you want to accomplish? If it does, then perfect. It might be great for you. And then the other part of that is like, hey, the blog talk shows are all about entrepreneurs and I'm really talking to real estate professionals, or, it just may not be a match to the kind of people you want to attract. So really look carefully at that, because 1 million, just more listeners, does not mean more business for you.
Yeah, I don't really buy into, you can tell I'm not a big fan of the internet radio, blog talk radio, whatever, any of these types of programs, because they're trying to have content that they own, that's in their network, that attracts people to go listen to their platform instead of another platform. And the way that we've been experiencing the trends happening for, listens to podcasts, the audiences for podcasts growing, the trend is definitely moving away from a set scheduled show at a certain time, even if it's recorded that you can watch afterwards. People, by and large, want to go to the biggest distribution channels for content that they can watch any show in,
right,
and not limit themselves going to a smaller organization that has less choices. So I really don't see that changing, and there being a significant benefit to doing, being on someone else's network or platform as a radio show. Unless the really only exception I see to that is if you're someone that really needs to have things organized for you, and having that pending live time once a week coming at that certain time,
and a producer who helps produce it for you, and
that to force you to do it, that otherwise you're not disciplined enough. And it's not meant to be a criticism, but I mean, you really are not the type of person that
you need that deadline.
Can be organized enough to, record at any old time you want. If you never record, then maybe that would be a bad thing.
Right. And thinking about that audience as being really critical to you is like, you also really important. I mean, you want to transfer that audience to you at some point, right? You want them to join your membership group, sign up for your email list, friend you on Facebook, like whatever the goals are for where you want to transfer that to. And we see a lower level of transfer happening from the blog shows. And one way to test this out, if you're concerned about it, it's to really test it out is to, if you like a certain blog talk network or a blog talk radio channel, like where they have multiple shows and you're considering going on with them, go on some of their other shows and as a guest. Check it out, try it out, see how it is, see if you get anyone to follow your call to action to friend you on Facebook from that. See what kind of transfer you get as a guest, because a guest is an expert. So theoretically, they should just get just as good a mix of transfer as the host themselves. Of course, the host has the repeat. So that will happen again and again and again for them. And what I found, because I've done tons of podcast interviews where I'm the guest and tons of radio show interviews, and I have found personally that I got less from the radio show and more from the podcast interactions than I did. There's more action taken by the podcast listeners than there is. Now, many of the shows do transfer and put you on a podcast, right? They give you a podcast link. And there are two kinds here, and that's one of the audience transfer problems you have is, so they create an iTunes page for you, right? You've got your show on iTunes, and that's great and everything. You don't get those subscribers. iTunes keeps those subscribers. So again, they're still not your listeners. They're iTunes listeners. So you have to be careful in that. And then the second problem that happens is some shows put a global show with every single one of their radio shows. Definitely do not agree to that. Whatever happens, you need your own icon, your own show. Unless all those shows are focused on exactly the same audience, like they're all about the same type of thing, and so you're all going to trade in getting that great audience, you're going to end up in a like one of many, and you don't want to be that. You want to be, you want to be the authority.
Well, and here's my biggest issue for you being the authority. I mean, at Feed Your Brand and at Brandcasters, we're all about podcasting to market and grow your business, right? This is about spreading your unique perspective and sharing your message with the world, yes, but you also want to get something out of it. Like Tracy said, you want to build a large following, you want to add to your email list, you want to have a market to sell your books or teaching courses, programs, products, could be many different things. But in order to do that, you really need to have the traffic come to your domain, to come to your website. And here's one of the things that happens with some of these networks is, yeah, they'll put you on iTunes. Oh, great, they're taking care of that for you. How wonderful. Problem is, when you go to that iTunes listing, there is a link to the website for the show. And all too often in these radio situations, that link is going to the radio show's website. They're capturing the web traffic. And also when it's promoted on Facebook or LinkedIn, the links for that are going to the radio show's website. That really doesn't help you. As podcasters, you build this audience who learns to know, like, and trust you and wants to hear more from you. And what happens is you want to engage them on your website, in your domain. The only way to do that is have full control and full rights of it. That link on iTunes page should go to your website.
Right.
Every link for every episode should link to your website. Even though we're putting this on Facebook right now as a live video, there's going to be a link below in the comments for our website, for feedyourbrand.co or
right.
brandcastingu.com. And that's where you come to engage in our content and see our podcasts. So social media is a wonderful thing. You use it, but you want to be bringing people back to your site, have your complete control over your audience, or at least have every opportunity to engage with that audience on your turf, basically.
Yeah, I mean, you want them to, see the sidebar, buy into your programs, find out how else they can connect with you. You just want that to happen. And that's what the radio show wants too. That's why they want you there, because they want to drive more eyes there. And that way they can sell more. They get more ads. They get more dollars from those ads and all of that. So, they have the same goals, but it's contradictory to you transacting business with a core audience. It's, how do I say it? It's distracting.
Well, so. and it's really, I think, can have a lot of brand confusion too. Yeah. And, you're in business to promote yourself as an individual or as a company, as a brand in some way, shape, or form.
Right. Now we see some people who do it really great. Like I love Aaron Young and Michelle Young's show. I mean, gosh, they do a great job there. It's the show is called The Unshackled Life, and they're doing a great job there, and it works out. And it's a really it's a wonderful network that they're on there, because it's all entrepreneurs. It's all focused on that. And they're thought leaders in that. And they're putting themselves out there like that. So that works really well for them. And that is a good situation. But it may not be working for every one of you. And that's what you really have to develop for yourself and do it.
I will say the only place that I watch their show, though, is on Facebook.
Right.
I'm not going to this radio show's website. And I don't know how many people are. I'd be interested to know that.
Right. And so that's, that is another thing that's like, where is the transacting of that really valuable to them? Those are things that you need to evaluate. And so check that out and see how that works before you sign on the dotted line.
Well, and then as any relationship, business or otherwise, has a beginning, a middle, and an end, remember there is an end. And
that's where we've been picking up the pieces lately, right?
When you get into it, make sure you know what you're getting into and what you're going to have to deal with when you get out of it. Because we've had a lot of trouble where somebody decides to part ways with this, radio show producer, and they immediately shut down their show on their website. It's like on their website, you're dead to them, right? Yeah. And that can be very difficult, because all of a sudden your podcast is no longer on iTunes and you want to continue it maybe. And maybe you, like a customer this week who contacted us, went and wants to continue their podcast on their own, but they had to work hard to get their old episode media so it could be relisted on iTunes. And they also, a lot of the assets, the cover art and, other details were hard for them to get. And the worst part, though, is the listing on iTunes. You want to continue that because you have a lot of subscribers that are listening to you all the time. And you want to maintain those subscribers. You don't want to make it difficult for them to find you again. So the last thing you want to do is list
Sonia's putting out that it's an exit strategy.
Yeah.
That's right. You need an exit strategy from the beginning, and you don't always think about it. And unfortunately, there's a lot of technical. So if you're going into Blog Talk Radio or you're going into the radio show with no technical skills, the exit strategy part is technical. And so you may not know that you didn't have the rights to it. You don't have the ability to get your files. You don't know how you're supposed to do it. And you go, hey, budget-wise, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And you stop paying, and now all of a sudden your content is gone, like literally gone off of it. And so luckily we caught this for this one client. We caught this where it was still cached and still able to be caught, and we were still able to get it all out of there. But it could have been tight. We were a little worried there.
There's a narrow window of time you have in order to have that continuity so that people don't have to resubscribe to your show. It's hard enough to get those subscribers the first time. To get them to subscribe twice to the same show can be very challenging. So you want to make sure that here's a slight techie detail. Forgive me on this slight techie tangent for a moment, but if somebody else lists your show on iTunes for you and they're providing the hosting of the podcast, they're providing the RSS feed, which is a URL that you give to iTunes, that's how they get your shows, right? You have to make sure that whoever has created that RSS feed is going to willingly provide you a redirect to your new feed. And that's how people will not have to resubscribe. You can start serving the podcast from somewhere different. The URL that's provided to iTunes doesn't change.
Yeah.
And you have continuity, but it's not always that easy. And sometimes you scramble trying to contact someone at the company. Oh, I need a redirect. And just getting them to even take your call when
because you're not a client,
can be really tricky. So these are the things that we're dealing with sometimes, picking up the pieces for others.
Yeah. And so anyway, we just wanted to put this out there. That's why we wanted to get this out with the Facebook Live and get it out as fast as possible so that you guys have this information and you can really consider how you're approaching this and what you're doing, and then maybe plan some smart controls in place and be aware that when you're ready to exit, call someone with the right technical skills, and do it before you say goodbye to your host or your radio contract or whatever you do. So
now I will also say absolutely nothing wrong with distributing your podcast through every possible distribution channel out there, especially if they're free, and most of them are, to list them. Great. Put it out everywhere. Just make sure that you're in control.
Yeah.
And you own it.
Yeah. And I do want to mention one that you have to be really careful of, the contracts on and how you get your content. iHeartRadio is incredibly restrictive in some ways in the way that it works there. So if you do have an iHeartRadio show, be aware of that. If it's an iHeartRadio first show, be aware of that. Sometimes you can rebroadcast. It's totally different that way. But if it's first on there, be really careful of that. So be cautious of that if you're headed into that situation on your show.
So what is it, Tracy? I think people really think, hey, there's a network out there like iHeartRadio, and that's going to build my show more quickly, right? And that they have an audience, there's a draw, and somehow that gives more credibility to your show, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what it is that, we're all struggling to get more clients, get more listeners, get more members, get whatever more of whatever we need in terms of lead generation, right? I mean, it's the biggest problem in every business I talk to. And so tapping your way out there, right? Finding new venues for that to happen in is really important. But what we found is that when you're in some of these where it is not important to them who you are, it's just important that they have more people, more members, more content, more for them does not translate to more for you. And so the right match of those things is critically important for you. Now, that being said, if you own your own content and everything's on your site and you're driving everyone's there and you're as we called it, rebroadcasting, right? You're in other directories and you're out there. That's really great. I mean, we encourage that. We do that for our clients here. We put them on TuneIn, which is the Alexa device, right? That's what you do. And go, hey, Alexa, play the Feed Your Brand podcast. We make sure that it's convenient. Google Play. Lots of people don't even know that Google Play has a whole podcast section, just like iTunes does. And it gets played a lot there. We have a good section, a growing section there. There's Stitcher. There's many directories, just directories of podcasts that people find cool. And they might have ones in your niche, like all the health and wellness. I can't even say that. Health and wellness podcasts are all together on, some people put a directory together of those, and the listings don't cost you. So they're free and they're there. So you definitely want that, get yourself out there and get yourself listed in as many as possible. And we try to keep that up on the major directories for our clients, and we provide that technical service because it is technical for the most part. But the other part is just building relationships with great groups to rebroadcast your message or share it.
Yeah, but it really has been our experience that even if you are just starting out as a podcaster and you have 100 fans, subscribers, listeners who are yours, that engage with you, come to your website, opt in what you have, they are much more valuable than 1,000 that are just out there off some other network that are perusing the content and watching from time to time. You really can build a very valuable following community network of fans who really want to listen to what you have to say in a relatively short period of time. And the traffic value that you can get to your website and all of the value that brings you is really significant and meaningful. And we see it with many different clients in many different ways, depending on what kind of business they're in, whether it's real estate or they're a doctor or they're a consultant. There's many many different ways that we
That it's
measure
working.
success, but it is actually working and transacting for them in business.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're here as resources to you. We want Feed Your Brand to be as helpful as possible. We want you to avoid pitfalls. We want you to give you the stuff that's working really well for podcasters out there, for brand casters, for bloggers. So it goes farther, right? Remember, we're always talking about brand casting means that you're blogging. You're creating good SEO, good Google links. You're podcasting, so you're getting stuff out there in audio. Maybe you're video casting. That's a choice. Some people just are not comfortable on video. It's not my favorite first choice, but look, we do it. So, video is an important and growing important part of that as well. And then we want to find other ways to like post on social and do some of these things that are just getting your messages heard and creating that so that you really start with one core thing that you do. And whether that's record your radio show or record your podcast or record your video, doesn't matter. You start from one thing and everything else flows from that, and you get multi-platform value from everything you do. Content marketing, right? That's what this is.
Yeah.
And so we just want to make sure to expose you to the ways that this is the thing about Tom and I. We have 3 kids. We have, a busy life. We run a business together. So we're in this to make sure that everything works as optimum as possible. And we would not keep podcasting for 2.5 years.
It's coming up on 3.
Coming up on 3. Yeah. We're more than 2.5 years, over 500 episodes on one of our shows. And we wouldn't be, and we started this one and another one. So we wouldn't be doing that if it wasn't working. And so that's really where we want to really show you the best practices. And we also want to share with you where it's working for people that are much more like you. Maybe your business isn't like ours and you're worried that it won't work for you. We want to share those and show those for you, techniques that are working. And so that's our ultimate goal here. And so if we can help you, if you have any questions or anything you want to share, things that you want us to cover in this podcast, please let us know. Share with us right here on Facebook at Feed Your Brand. And you, of course, always go to the website, feedyourbrand.co, and you can leave a message there as well.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, guess that covers it, doesn't it?
Yeah. So thanks for watching and listening, right? That was the first time we get to say that.
All right.
Thanks for watching and listening, and we'll be back soon with another episode of Feed Your Brand.